Hello, foodie fans. Welcome to the Big Food Talk, produced by Tough Monkey Entertainment. I'm your host, Sal Conca. This show supports restaurants, chefs, and food pioneers with your help. Head to bigfoodtalk.com to make your donation today, or check out our fun apparel line with proceeds going directly to participating restaurants. Special thanks to the Long Island Food Council, Dine LI Facebook group, and Yelp Long Island for supporting this episode. Today, I'm speaking with Anne from Napolitano Consulting, who offers an array of accounting services to the restaurant, food, and beverage industry. Have you ever romanticized about owning a restaurant? Wonder what goes into the prices of menu items at your favorite date night spot? Anne offers her expertise and advice to new restaurant owners in this week's Big Food Talk. Let's hear Anne's story. Hi, Anne. Welcome to the Big Food Talk. I'm so excited to speak with you today. How's everything going for you?
Oh, everything is going well. Thanks very much. And thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, absolutely, Anne. And I think we have to give a shout out to Adam, who introduced us. He's a great
Adam is
guy.
great at making connections. He is.
Yes,
He is the master. He is the master.
He is. He runs a business called Connections for Hire. So, he's introduced me to a number of people, and you're one of them. And I know you're an accountant and a CPA, and I think you service the hospitality industry for the most part. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's one of the main focuses of my accounting practice. We're based on Long Island, but we service clients all over the country. And one of my interests is food. I used to be a personal chef as well. So I love cooking and I love the food aspect of it. And combining accounting and food is perfect for me.
That's great. It's one of those, things where you get to kind of follow your dream, even having been a chef, and you can still stay in that world of food, but then also do the other things that you have talent and skill at, like accounting, finance, numbers.
Absolutely. And I never imagined it could work out like this, since I had done accounting for so many years and then left it for a little while to do cooking. And now I've been able to come back to accounting and work really hard at it and grow my practice, but yet now focus on the hospitality industry, food, restaurants, breweries, and things like that. So it's working out very well.
That's so cool. Yeah, I think you were even telling me just before we got started with the interview, one of the breweries is now nationally known because of what they did during COVID. Why don't you tell a little bit about who's that brewery and what was their story?
It's a brewery in Huntington. It's called Six Harbors Brewery. And during the pandemic, they started a delivery service because obviously they were closed. So they started using their 2 golden retriever dogs to make deliveries to local homes who had requested it. And now it's turned into a big part of their business. And they were featured nationally and internationally on network news and stories. And it really helped drive their business and keep them going through the pandemic.
That's so cool. I think, their finances must be doing pretty well right now. I'm assuming, or at least up from where they were, hopefully. I hope they're doing well.
They're doing much better now. I mean, now they've been able to expand to outdoor dining and 50% indoor dining as well. So that's definitely been a big help for them. But just getting that media attention and being able to pivot, I think the whole experience of the pandemic has been, how do you survive and what can you do to make changes to things and what's unique, right? And they did something very special and it really helped get them some business. So now they have an online website where you can order and then pick up from them or get some deliveries. So it works out well.
That's so cool. Yeah, I saw the national news story. I'm sure a lot of people listening to this have as well. And, it just was really unique. It was a really unique idea. And that's the beauty of what has happened, is seeing the creativity from chefs and restaurateurs and breweries and everybody doing these collaborations and the ideas that are coming out of it for the food industry and hospitality. So I know, we're here to talk a little bit about finance and accounting. It's the topic nobody really wants to talk about. Business owners, right? Chefs, they just want to cook, right? They don't really want to talk about numbers.
Exactly. That's completely correct. But that's why you come to somebody like us, so that we can take that away from you and you don't need to worry about it. But yet it's such an important piece of the business. You really, really need to understand the numbers behind a restaurant because the margins are so small. So one small change in things can make the difference between surviving and thriving or not surviving at all.
Yeah, I believe that for sure. And as we've seen, a number of restaurants that we all know and love, have gone under already. It's no doubt that the times are very difficult, but we also know the margins in restaurants are razor thin to begin with. I think a lot of us, myself included, we romanticize the idea of owning a restaurant. I had somebody on the show, John Conrad from Sawasdi Thai Elevated in Plainview, and that was his dream. Wanted to have a restaurant, and he thought he'd be sitting in the corner table hanging out with friends. I mean, it's got to
Hmm.
be it has to be a labor of love. It is a labor of love. But there's financial impact to you as well in order to run a business. So maybe you can give me some examples or give the audience some ideas. If you needed to finance a new restaurant, right? Like, I want to open a new spot. How can one go about that? Where can you attain financing? How do you set up your structure? How do you even get started in the restaurant business financially?
Financing is very difficult, and that's why you see a lot of people turn to friends and family to get the initial funding for that. Because think about it, a bank is really not going to want to invest money in a restaurant, especially when the failure rate is so high. So it's not a very stable industry to be in to begin with. And generally, when you're starting out, you don't have any background to it, no credit, so it's really difficult. A lot of people turn to friends and families or partners and try to bring in somebody that can inject some capital into it for them. So it's really important at the beginning to set up the structure the right way. Look at perhaps an LLC so that you have limited liability. And as a partnership, that might work as well, or a corporation. But those things you really need to think about right from the beginning so that you get it set up correctly, get the investors involved, get their percentages in, the funding in, and get everything set. And also realize that you're always going to need more money than you think you're going to need. So it's best to try to get all of that in place before you even start taking those next steps forward.
Sure. And what are some of the startup costs that restaurants incur from the get go? I mean, you go into a new spot. I'm assuming there's renovations, new equipment. I mean, what are the things that restaurant owners, may not even think about?
It's those costs that you mentioned, like leasing, right? And then the build out, it's very expensive, thousands and thousands of dollars to get the equipment in place, to get the ambiance, the furniture, the fixtures, the dishwashers, all of the refrigerators, those types of things, and get the leases in place. A lot of them are leases. So, and that's why you see a lot of new restaurants look to older restaurants that have gone out of business to pick up their equipment, because
Hmm.
sometimes you can save some significant money by doing things like that. But then there's things on top of that that you really need to think about as well, like the other costs of the business, like insurance that you're not necessarily going to think about, liability insurance, business interruption insurance, which has turned out to be very important when going through the pandemic, since a lot of policies did not cover viral type issues. So business interruption didn't come into play. So things like that you don't really think about, but are really important.
Absolutely. I think insurance is one of those things that I never even took into consideration. I run a food business, Big Lou's Onion Sauce, as you know, and I have insurance. There's a company called Flip that offers food manufacturers really inexpensive insurance up to $2 million in liability. But as I'm going through conversations as the business has grown, it is based upon your sales, and so for a restaurant, I assume it's based upon your square footage, how many patrons can be there, the liability you need to carry, so yeah, there's a lot of factors to consider when thinking about costs and startup costs and restaurants, the hidden costs that people don't think about.
The hidden costs. The insurance plays off of a lot of different things based on labor. Sometimes you need
Mhm.
to look at how many people are working for you. It depends sometimes on how much of your sales are from liquor. They look at liquor
Ah,
sales, and that impacts the cost of the insurance as well. If you're a bar or you have a bar area, your liquor sales are higher, it definitely impacts the cost of the insurance. There's other things also to consider, unemployment insurance and workers' comp insurance. All of those things need to be in place from the beginning. I see a lot of clients that get stuck with penalties
mhm.
for not having workers' comp insurance from the first day, as soon as you start paying people. And
Sure.
a lot of people don't even realize that they need it.
Wow. Yeah, it's incredible what really goes into it. And so, a lot of people, we talk about the restaurant industry, the margins being so thin. Um, what does that really mean? I mean, what does a restaurant expect? We all know food costs are high. When you go eat out at a restaurant, you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how much I just paid for that meal. At the end of
Absolutely.
the right, and so, but what goes into that? Why are the margins so thin? I mean, it's the things we just alluded to, but what can a restaurant owner expect in terms of margins? How much profit should a restaurant expect to make?
Well, profit margins generally are in the 3 to 5% range.
Hmm.
So it's usually pretty small, but it can range anywhere from 0 to 15%. It just depends on the business and how they're doing. Food costs are big. So your food costs are around 25 to 35%. Liquor margins are generally very high, which is why a lot of restaurants make most of their money off of their liquor margins. You can see margins around 80% off of liquor, which is fantastic. And that definitely helps the business. But you're going to see about 75% of your sales are going to be eaten up by real estate, labor, right? And your food costs. So it's so important to look at every single line item to try to figure out where the money is going and to look at your menu prices too. And you
Hmm.
can do calculations to try to figure out where your menu prices should be. So there's
Yeah.
a few different ways that you can do that based on, you can base it on other restaurants in the area. You know, they have similar dishes. You want to be somewhere in the range, perhaps. You can also look at things like your food costs and then calculate it based on what you think your food cost percentage should be, that you're going to estimate that maybe, you know, we just said that the range would be 25 to 35%. So you pick a number in between and use that based on and calculate with your food costs, the raw cost of perhaps your chicken or your steak and things like that to back into what your menu cost should be, your menu price should be.
Sure. And that brings me to my next question is around like the types of reporting. I mean, so you need to be able to keep track of your numbers. You need to be able to do reporting, right? So whether that's an Excel spreadsheet or using a platform like QuickBooks or, whatever it is, what types of reports do restaurant owners need to keep track of in order to keep their business running and making sure they are hitting their margins and their goals?
Well, I think it's very important to make sure that the data gets into whatever software you're using, because that's the big thing. Because so many restaurants, they wait and they don't do things timely. So you're really not looking at current data. And that's the most important thing. You really want to see, okay, now it's the middle of July. What happened last month? How did we do? You know, and you need to be able to turn it around pretty quickly. Your profit and loss statement is probably the first place that most people look, so that you can see your sales number and your cost of goods to be able to come up with that profit margin, and then look at the rest of the expenses, you know, all of those things that we talked about: insurance, rent, the leasing of equipment. All of those are very important. Your point of sale system, right? And that some of those are very costly these days. But also important, besides the profit and loss statement, I think, is a cash flow. It's really understanding how much money is coming into the business on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, so that you can really see cash in versus cash out, and not necessarily profit and loss. It's a little different, and a lot of restaurant owners have some difficulty understanding that difference, because you could be investing in your fixed assets, like the build out of the restaurant, and that has no impact on your profit and loss statement. And
Hmm.
so you wouldn't see that, but yet that cash is going out the door every time you fix something in the restaurant that's big, or buy a refrigerator, things like that.
Sure.
So it's really important.
And that also accounts for things like insurance and other things that are not direct related food costs. So
Correct.
how does somebody account for that? How does that factor into the equation of your, let's say, your pricing on your menu? Like, is there a formula for that you can break down? And I don't know if you can give that formula on this interview, but are there formulas that they just have that people can plug and play in terms of how to figure out these costs and things like that?
Well, there's a variety of ways that you can come up with those costs. That's basically what we would call overhead, right? It's not related directly to the food, but yet it's a significant portion of the money that goes out of the business. You could do things as basic as taking a percentage, take a look at the total amount that you're spending for all of those costs, and then figuring out, I need to apply a piece of that to everything I sell.
Hmm.
So, but then there's also more complicated ways that we could go into, but we do that more on a case by case basis as opposed to, you know, something so general. But yeah, it's definitely important to not just look at food costs, but labor, rent, all of the other costs that go into running a business.
Sure. And so, a lot of new restaurant owners or new businesses, they're scrappy. They try to do things on their own. Like, is there software that you do recommend that a restaurant owner take a look at that can help them manage their finances easier?
We recommend a variety of software. We are QuickBooks certified pro advisors and Xero partners. Xero is a newer version, a later entry into the accounting software. They've been around for a few years, but we really like their platform. But we service QuickBooks and Xero and a couple others. So we can recommend both and work with all of those. But I would definitely recommend getting on board with something like that from the beginning. We find a
Cool.
lot of people say they can't afford to do something like that, but it's very important to have an understanding of the finances of the business from the very, very beginning, and to not get in over your head and not realize what's going on. And trying to do it with Excel spreadsheets doesn't really work very well, and it makes it harder. And I think it also becomes more time consuming. With tools like QuickBooks and Xero, we can automate a lot of the processes for you and make things run smoothly in the background without you having to do a lot of day-to-day data entry. Point of sale systems integrate with QuickBooks and with Xero, so those transactions can come in every day automatically, and then we can reconcile them to make sure that everything is being accounted for. Another issue that you really want to pay attention to is sales tax as well, making sure that you can track all of your sales and pay the appropriate sales tax that you've collected and do it correctly, and not overpay or underpay and get yourself into a difficult situation. So we handle that as well. But reconciling that can be very difficult. So again, it's important to make sure that the point of sale is talking to your accounting software and that everything is coming in correctly.
Sure, absolutely. And I think that's what's important. Like we talked about, chefs just want to be chefs. Restaurant owners just want to be restaurant owners. So the opportunity cost of not implementing systems like this can actually be more detrimental in the long run. You may lose more money in the long run because you're not keeping track of it, or the ultimate price is going out of business because you didn't pay attention to where the money was going. So it would be, the investment up front to make sure you have these systems in place is priceless. You can't put a price tag on that.
Absolutely. And we find even if you come after the fact and we have to go back and clean things up, the costs are so much higher because it involves so much more time and dealing with state agencies or the IRS or any of those, agencies that you don't want to deal with, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And try to fix things that have taken place before, or set up the accounting system, or clean it up and take care of all those things, because restaurant business is so detailed. There's so many little transactions that you need to pay attention to every day. So if your average ticket is $50 or $100, you get a volume of those. And so it really takes a lot of very detail oriented work to make sure that everything is correct.
Absolutely. So having been in this side of the business for a while, what are some of the questions restaurant owners come to you with most? What do they have questions about? What are they trying to understand? Like when a new client comes to you, what's the most common things you hear?
A lot of times they come to us, unfortunately, with issues, something that's gone wrong. Either it's a sales tax issue, income tax issue, payroll issue, or just that they don't understand their finances. They really don't know what's going on in the restaurant. They have, like you said, they love to cook. They like to handle all of those things. They don't want to deal with this. So they don't know what's going on and they don't understand. So we try to sit and go through transactions and look at the overall health of the business, and then also try to come up with some projections for them so that they can look forward and say, oh, if my sales are this, my costs need to be at this point. This is what I need to pay attention to. And making those slight tweaks. Maybe we use a different insurance broker and get a different policy. Maybe we
Sure.
can save some money. Using different vendors for things, and analyzing expenses line by line to see where we can cut some things and improve things. Food vendors, making sure that the invoices are being paid on time so that we're not paying late fees, and also looking at food vendors to see if maybe we can get food from a different, products from a different vendor and save some money or change things. So we try to look at things line by line.
Makes sense, complete sense. And again, that just comes down to the fact that this is why you need to get started early with these things as early on in the process. And if you're not paying attention to your finances, which sounds almost ridiculous to say, but we know it happens, right?
Exactly.
It's like, well, somebody runs a business and they're not paying attention to their finances. How could that be? But it happens all the time. And I think Anne, I think you're running a great service for these restaurants over there, and you're doing a great job. Obviously, you're quite knowledgeable. Um, if a restaurant is maturing, they've been in business for a long time, do you have recommendations on how they manage their profits or savings? Is there ways that they can use that to leverage the business itself to expand or do other things? Like, how does a business leverage their finances and savings, to make more money?
It depends a lot on what their goals are. We do try to understand, are you happy where you are? Is this what you want? You want to be able to take money out of the business and use it for your personal life or your family? Or do you want to invest it back in and grow? Maybe you want to take over a space next to you or above you so that you can grow it and do something different, or move to some different, like a delivery service or some online things, right? And like we've seen in the last few months where this has happened, right? So it's the key is listening to the restaurant owner and understanding what their goals are and what they're trying to do. Do they want to open a second location if things are successful? Is that something that they're interested in? So it's really a great conversation to have, and just listen, understand, figure out what they want, and then try to help them get to where they want to be.
Sure, absolutely. Well, Anne, this conversation has been so insightful. I think restaurant owners and even people that are just foodies and restaurant lovers like myself, they're going to have a better understanding of what goes into the restaurant business. Is there anything additional that you'd like to share that we didn't cover that you feel like is important for people to hear?
Not really. I think we've pretty much covered everything. It's
You
just
got it.
that my firm really has a passion for restaurants and for the food business. And I think that really helps. So we do understand a lot of what goes on behind the scenes and can really help you get where you want to be, and help you grow and help you be successful. And it's because we love it so much. And that's the key is I get very excited by food and I love to cook. And so, like you said, owning a restaurant, a lot of the times it's a passion, right? People want to do something like that. And I could see myself doing it as well. But I think being in the accounting side of it is better for me as well. But we love to help that way.
Excellent. And where can people reach out to you? How do they find you? Do you have a website, phone numbers, social media? Where is the best place to contact you?
We are on social media. We have a great new website that we just launched a couple of weeks ago. It's www.napolitanoaccounting.com. And our phone number is 631-815-6713. And we're on all the social media applications. We're out there. We post regularly to give tips to our readers. So
Excellent. And I'll make sure to include all those links in our show notes for people to take a look at. And Anne, I just want to thank you again for joining me today. I really appreciate all the insights you were able to provide, and I wish you nothing but continued success in the future.
Well, thanks very much for having me on, Sal. I really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun.
You got it, Anne. Take care.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to The Big Food Talk, produced by Tough Monkey Entertainment. Subscribe on iTunes and wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow us on Instagram for behind-the-scenes takes, or watch complete episodes on YouTube. Don't forget to make a donation at bigfoodtalk.com.